Hello, today I'm going to show you how I like to tie a gold-bodied Willie Gunn flamethrower. I'm going to use a size 7 gold salar and size 8 zero tying thread. So we'll tie on, a few turns to hold the thread in place, cut off the surplus, then use open turns back towards the back of the fly and then a few more open turns back towards the middle. The next thing to do is introduce a tag, and in this case I'm using gold tinsel. Just the underside, a few turns to tie it on, then create a tag with 3 or 4 turns of the tinsel. 2, 3, 4. Bring the tinsel back up to the top and then back through between the hooks to the underside. Few turns to tie it off and then cut off the surplus. We'll now use the same material to form the rib. So tie it onto the underside, hold it in place, and this done, we now need to introduce the holographic tinsel that will form the rear body of the fly. So tie it into the middle and using overlapping turns bring it back towards the tag and then back towards the middle of the fly again. Once there, tie it off. Few turns to hold it in place, bring it back and lock it into place and cut off the surplus. This done, we now want to create the rib. So 1 turn around the back and open turns over the holographic tinsel. Then tie it off, a couple of turns hold it in place, back over itself to lock it into position and tie off the surplus. Now we wish to create the rear hackle, which is made up of 3 parts, a yellow feather, then an orange and then a black. So there we go, we'll introduce it to the back, a few turns hold it in place, cut off the surplus. Pair of hackle pliers to hold the feather tight. Tease the feathers back a little bit just to help start this going. Now grab the bottom of the feather and start winding. Teasing the feather back as you go. There's 1. Again, teasing it back to make sure it goes properly. And there's 2. 2 turns and lock it off at the top. A couple of turns to hold it in place. Cut off the surplus. It's fine. Now introduce the orange feather and tight up to the yellow one. A few turns to hold it in place. Cut off the surplus. Tease the feather back like before. Grab the bottom of the feather and start it winding. All the time teasing it back. That's the first turn. 1 more turn. And there's the second one. And tie it off. couple of turns, hold it in place, cut off the surplus, just tidy it up, just push it all back, a couple of turns. Now lastly, we need to tie in the black feather. Now this feather is quite sparse, so I'm probably going to give it 3 turns this time. So a couple of turns, hold in place, cut off the surplus, hold the hackle pliers, push feather back a little bit just to help start this going. Grab the bottom of the feather to help the first turn. Just one turn. And keep teasing it back. 2 turns. One more. Again, just keep teasing it back. Back up to the top and tie it off. Then a couple of turns, hold it in place. Cut off the surplus. Tease the feather back on itself and hold it with your hand and just tie it off. Just to hold it back towards the tail. There we go. Any stray feathers, just pull them out. There we go. The next thing we need to do is introduce the tail. So out of the wing, which is orange, yellow and black bucktail, about 1.5 times the length of the fly. So put that on. Hold on top, a couple of light turns, okay, looks okay, and cut off the surplus. Once done, I want to introduce a bit of gold tinsel to the top. 1 strand on the top of the fly, and then back wind over the top. So just wind back to get the wing right. There you go. Tight it up. There you go. And cut off the surplus. Any stray you don't like. The next is to create the body, the front body, which is black floss. So introduce it to the body, a few turns to hold and lock it in place, then bring the thread to the front where you'd like the body to stop, and wind it in using touching turns. That's where I want to stop it, so lock it into place, a couple of turns, back on itself, and again a couple of turns to lock it. And here I like to put a half hitch in, so there we go, half hitch. And cut off the surplus. Now it's time to create the front hackle, which again is yellow, orange and black. So again, the yellow one first. These are bigger feathers than the rear ones because you want them to cover slightly the rear hackle. A few turns to hold it in place. Again, cut off the surplus. feather with the hackle pliers, pinch the feather back, grab the bottom part of the feather and start the turn. Just teasing it back to make sure it goes where it's supposed to. One turn and teasing it back the second turn. Now tie it off. Two, three turns hold in place. Cut off the surplus feather. Next, introduce the orange feather. A few turns hold in place. Cut off the surplus. Use the hackle pliers to hold the feather. Again, pinch it back to start. Grab the bottom of the feather and make your first turn. Teasing it back. There's one turn. One more. Teasing it back. There's your second. Now, lock it off. Couple of turns hold in place. Cut off the surplus. And lastly, the black feather. Again, it's quite a sparse feather, so I'm going to give it 3 turns so it shows up. A few turns to hold in place. Cut off the surplus. Hackle pliers to hold the feather. Pinch it back to help it start. Grab the bottom of the feather with your fingers and start the first wind. Tease the feather back. There's one. Teasing the feather back all the time. 2 and one more. Teasing it back, feather to the top. Lock it off. A few turns hold in place. And cut off the surplus. Now use your fingers to bring all the feathers together, and we'll back wind over the feathers to help create the head of the fly. A few turns. There we go, that's good. Cut off any stray feathers that are in the way. And at this point again, just lock it off with a half hitch just to hold everything in place. Now what we introduce is the jungle cock eyes. Now the way I like to do this is I put the eye through the eye of the hook, hold the feather in place roughly where I want it, a couple of turns just to hold it, make sure it's where I want it, grab the other jungle cock eye and do the same. Couple of light turns just to hold it. Make sure it's in the right place. It is. A few more turns. Once I've done that, I bring the stalk of the junglecock eye back through the hook. Now this can be fiddly, but it helps to lock the feather off. There we go. Now grab the two parts, back over itself, couple of wraps, and then grab them and cut them off. There you go. A few more turns. Lock it off. Now at this point you could just cut off and varnish the fly. Now some people like to give a little sparkle to the fly, so they add in mirage tinsel over the top of this. So we'll do that. So get the mirage tinsel, wind it on, a couple of turns to hold it, bring the surplus back over itself to lock it in place, a few more turns. Now we'll lock off the tying thread, 2 or 3 turns, cut it off. The surplus tinsel on the tail, grab with your fingers and cut it off as well. Now at this stage what I like to do is add a little bit of varnish to the head, varnish or some glue like anything you want to use instead, hard as nails, super glue, whatever. Now this is quite delicate, so gently wrap it round over the glued area. If you put too much pressure it just snaps, so you need to be careful. Wrap it over the head until you've covered the entire area. It's not too bad. Now, before I tie it off, a little more varnish. Again, super glue or hard as nails is probably better for this, but there you go. Now I want to lock it off with a couple of hitches. 1, 2. There you go. Cut off, and there you go. A gold-bodied Willie Gunn flamethrower. All you need to do is varnish the head and it's ready to go. Hope this is helpful. Good luck and happy tying.